All right, it's 5:31. We'll call the meeting to order. David and Ralston, the chairpersons. You Walters, our second official meeting and our first real organizational meeting, so I'm glad we could finally get this underway. The first item on the agenda is public comment, which we know that this proposal was created at the behest of some people that had discovered this in the state statutes and wanted to bring it to Greenfield. So I'd like to open the meeting to public comment period. So who wants to go first?
Where would you like it there? What?
Oh, we have some stuff to present.
You do what
That
you
I
do.
think will help, the committee deal with some of the issues about eligibility and other rules. But I'd rather wait till afterwards to give you a chance to talk about it, but I've got some of the things that we had for up there, is some stuff that Mitch and Joan found from Newton, Massachusetts, which has run that program since I think
Irving's engine.
late nineties.
Yeah.
One of the first times to get involved.
Engine and.
But that's a handle from committee members that go over, that I think will be useful to you as you design this program, which is what you have to do. Fortunately, the good news is that you can design it from scratch. There's very few rules about what a city or town does to implement this program. But that's, I mean, I could present it now if you want, but I'd rather let the committee go on a bit, and then you can ask us, to present what materials we have. David, is that here?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that you could give us an overview of what your thinking is on where this committee, when you were trying to get it created, what your thinking was.
Yeah.
As to what role it can fulfill for
Yeah,
the town.
so I'll just make a couple of very quick comments and then we have some more to say later, but, this program, which as David said, is something that we found when we were looking in the lawyer's guide to some of the elderly and disabled tax credits. The exemptions that are available.
Here.
And the, come on, hold that up, John.
Yes.
If you haven't seen this, the
Greenfield.
Mass Association of real estate, whatever.
Elder law
So
education.
it's put together by lawyers who know the state general law. And we found in there a program that had been enacted in the late nineties. And said to ourselves, well, this is interesting. I wonder if Greenfield has something. like this. We found out from inquiring around that nobody had heard of it. The idea of an elderly tax fund that people could, elderly and disabled tax fund that people could contribute to $1 or more. The statute actually talked about $1 or higher. We thought, well, there's two parties that win here. One is the consumer, who's having trouble paying the fine, and the other is the city, because it means you get more collectibles. So if we give money to someone who's struggling to pay their taxes, the money is really, the past and the is really helping them to pay their bill. And so we're bringing directly to the money that made up the city of Greenfield. So it alleviates some of our stress that taxpayers have. And at the same time, it's a increase in that they might otherwise have to get in more. So it's a win-win for those people. And it also gives, frankly, some taxpayers in town who might feel that they have an obligation, I'm talking about big businesses that are making some nice rewards in this, being located in the town, profits that they take away from being here, that they might want to give back. So we're hoping that we can see on a number of fronts the benefits to the consumer and to the city from this program.
Now, Al, I'm familiar with the fact that Newton has it and Lexington has it, but there's several other towns.
Oh, yeah, we know that, we think there's at least 30 or 40 towns, but the interesting thing is nobody has the data. The reason for that is that the Commissioner of Revenue, the Department of Revenue, which supposedly oversees these projects and approves them, they are notoriously.
Yeah.
difficult to get anything on terms of data like this. Because they approve them and then
Yeah.
file them, and they're not kept anywhere online. You can't go online and look for, elderly disabled
Right now,
tax
it's only
fund.
about
You'll get a little narrative about what it is, but you won't see any data about which towns have them and don't. So we found them just by trial and error by looking at, if you go to some of these towns, like, for example, that you looked at tonight, they'll have a section about the elderly and disabled tax fund and how it works and how you can apply.
94.
How the eligibility guidelines are, which is pretty important. But we counted over 30 communities that had this program. But I suspect it could be significantly higher, but there's also a lot of communities like, or anyone in Franklin County that's already got the program. So, and the reason for that is that the award does not oversee the program. It's your program to run. As long as you have a board that's composed like the one they have, they don't come in and tell you who should be eligible. There's a few simple guidelines about some of the a notice on the tax, bill and so forth. But other than that, there's the state involvement. It's really a local program, which is, I think, good.
Any more pressure?
But we don't know anything about how much money they don't.
Yeah, I own right now, I give it.
Yeah, some of the towns will tell you that, I forget what they said, but they said, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
They would like to hear from someone from the assessors department to speak personally on it. One of you, and to discuss some of those, tools. And
What's the person's name?
James Shaw.
Free lane,
And this is.
or tree not.
Yes.
Okay.
The suspicion that Newton's receipts are gonna be higher than ours, but it's a place to start.
Well, but they've been around a long time as well.
It's true.
West Sparrow and Danvers as well.
One here.
have programs.
But what I found is that there's not a whole lot of outreach to, for example, the business division. Which, from my perspective, is a very likely place to start, rather than other taxpayers who was trying. I'd rather give it some of the businesses. The business associations, the individual agencies. We got some large corporations in Greenfield that
Sure, go ahead.
get some good PR out of it as well.
You're going up there. It's
We're
never
even
been down
faster.
there. You're not playing around with it, like,
These end properties and have a good make a joke. Could you speak a little louder? Yeah.
I'm gonna shut that.
Radio. Yeah, we hear
And it's that thing that I think it's coming.
the voice out there, then.
Yeah.
Yes, it's gonna be doing, I think that's the- Yeah,
What I was asking is, what are your thoughts about getting voluntary contributions from the owners of exempt properties?
the tax exempts,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely,
Yeah.
but keep in mind, as you know, a lot of those properties are city owned. There's a very large segment of DPW properties. There's a lot of money that's tied up in the city's business that is exempt from taxation. But yeah, I very much think that if you've got a large business or nonprofit that's making billions of dollars, but anyway, the tax exempt properties that actually, you gave this number, 5.4 million in tax exempt properties in 2025, I think, 2024. But as I say, at least a third of it was city owned. But yeah, absolutely thinking that they, that contribution from exempt properties will be one, but they're not the only one. You have, corporations that,
Sure.
are BJ's, companies that are making a lot of money.
I think we should look at this from a community, but also the model I would look at is, the CPI, the corporate as well as partnership, as well as the individual. I don't want to exclude anyone in participating in this program.
And contributing.
And contribute.
Yes.
Yeah, including.
Yeah.
Even Starbucks.
Yeah, especially, there are some individuals who can use chain stores that have, they on it. And I don't doubt that they will contribute.
Yeah.
Knowing the people.
Do we know what the level of, because, going into our agenda, you know, we're gonna be looking at what other people have done, what other towns have done, is the way I'm thinking. And trying to collect as much information as possible, and then develop our own protocol. Do we know what the level of, approval, or the process of approval, whatever we come up with is?
Approval of what?
If we come up with guidelines and programs that maybe we wanna do some pilot work, you know, maybe in lieu of taxes, that kind of stuff. Do we, I mean, obviously, we have to get the city on board. But I mean, beyond that, is Department of Revenue, or is there some other higher thing with the state that we're gonna have to respond to?
So they don't really care who you get your money from. I suppose if you, for example, I wouldn't call anything a pilot in this context. That's something.
Payment in.
No, I know what it is. I wouldn't use that terminology for this because I don't want this to be a quid pro quo, is that you're giving us, because of the land you own, which isn't taxable, you're giving us something. That's another program, that's a state program, that does have rules.
Okay.
But I think this, for something like this, David, you can just, really create your own approach, say to a company that you think you could get a lot of goodwill out of this and you'd be helping the community, and you'd be money being here, which is great, and we're happy to have you, et cetera. I think a lot of them, well, depending on who asks. A lot of these companies will be interested in doing it, and I'd like to recommend later that we approach some of them, we have some of the, make a list of some of the gems and the big ones. That have high value. But I think a lot of those properties, in my opinion, are very attractively valued for those companies. They make them. We have some of those companies don't want to be taxed at all, but
I'm not sure we spend as much time on making sure their valuations are appropriate, because we don't get any benefit from it. But, my suspicion is that because we have the cyclical review every 10 years, that, they ought to be reviewed at least to make sure that close to market value. But of course, what's a church worth? How many churches turn over?
that sort of thing. And some churches will give, some churches won't. Some, some of the local businesses will give, some won't.
Yeah.
I think we're by trial and error, the more people that give, and the more visible that giving is, the better it can be for.
Oh, absolutely.
So I had a question. If, let's say, some of these businesses are contributing, what is one way we can ensure that we make that visible? Like, will that be something that you put on a city website, like, oh, these are our contributors, or how do we go about?
To acknowledge that.
There are people who, when they donate, there probably should be a question, do you wish to be anonymous or things for your group? Because some people don't want to be, they don't want to start getting phone calls. They get the one with it. So I think that should be part of the form when somebody contributes, is that I would like to remain anonymous.
I'd like to come back to a question that David raised that I think is important. And how does this fit into the legal framework of the city?
Joe, could you speak louder? We can't hear.
Oh, sorry. The question is, how does this committee fit within the legal structure, the legal machinations of the city? Does, we approve and then recommend to the council, or is it totally independent and, we're a jurisdiction unto ourselves or something like that?
That's
I don't know.
Yeah, the statute doesn't really say much about it, and
Yeah.
it's very bare bones. May create.
Read clause 18, that's very bare bones.
The question, I think is a really important question to get information on, because, for example, the Community Preservation Board, that was passed. This, the CPA, I don't know whether it was voted by the state language on this, but everything they recommend is that the recommendation that goes to the city council. And the city council then takes their recommendation of who gets money. So
That could happen here too. I mean, the only difference is that we're talking about individuals. You know, that you come up with a list of 18 individuals this year that are gonna get an award. The town might argue that we don't want to expose those people to being, seen as somehow taking advantage of the situation and, oh, we know them and they don't. But
That fits in public records request.
yeah, so we're gonna have to, I think, Jim, what I would do is I think that the committee should make a note to ask Kathy Scott how this board should relate to the city council and to public records, because, they will have to make a decision about whether they want oversight over who you name. The city council may be able to simply vote. Some of these other towns can tell us, when you talk to you, they can tell us, no, we as a board we make our awards and we don't even show them to the select board. Or we don't show them to the city council, they don't care, they're saying, we're entrusting you to run this program. We should find out how others are doing it, because in all the literature I've seen, I didn't see any reference to who oversees. I can tell you that this is a public body, therefore it's treated like other public bodies. It's taped. There's a public record of it that should be eventually on GCTV or on YouTube. All these meetings, and you follow all the same procedure, comment period. So a lot of the rules that affect the different boards, but I think Kathy would probably be the best source to tell you. She probably won't know, honestly. She'll probably have to talk to other towns.
It seems though, because the money, there's no city money being spent here,
Right. Well, there's time.
right?
You have staff.
There's staff
Right.
time, there is staff time.
Right.
But so it seems to me that would be relatively autonomous. In terms of the statute, in terms of we get money in, we create a criteria. In looking over a few of the documents from other towns, some towns do a much better job than others in terms of being very, very meticulous around criteria, which I would recommend. And then following that criteria, that's how grants are made, depending on, what's in the pie.
Yeah, and we need to, I mean, ultimately, we're just at the beginning of this road, so are we the ones that are going to be deciding grant applications, or is we just set the criteria and then somehow it's done within the city government?
No, this committee is expected to come up with
Yeah.
recommendations of beneficiaries.
Beneficiaries?
Yes.
Yeah. You will have a review session at the appropriate time when you look at the 12 applications or 20 applications that you received and you'll vote them up or down. Which is why you need criteria.
It may be a nit. I think we stop calling this a committee or a board. Because we have committees and boards in the town, and unless it is a committee. Well, it's a fund. It isn't anything.
No, it's a board. I think it's fallen board in the statute.
But okay, so,
Yeah, we do fund.
Yeah, no.
and in terms of, okay, is there any other public comments so we can move through the agenda, because we only have the room till 6:30. Our bases and get ready for the next meeting too. Any other public comment?
Well, mine might not have anything to do with it, but, where I live is exactly where 3 locomotives park. And the rule is, it's the EPA state law, they can't park for more than half an hour. Well, they park for 6 hours on Tuesday, an hour and a half the next day, and then at night, another almost 2 hours. So they keep breaking the law and getting away with it.
This should be irrelevant.
And so what I was told by Natalie Blythe and the mayor's office is to copy down the names of the locomotives, the numbers.
Yeah.
So I do that because I can just walk right across the street. There they are, 3 locomotives. The Amtrak or freight? They're freight, they're always freight. The Amtrak just goes right by, that's right. Freight, and it's always 3 locomotives. And they're always parked right across from my place. And so after a while, you get the fumes, diesel fumes, and then I have to leave. I have to leave my house because I don't want to get cancer.
I don't know that I think that's beyond the ken of our committee.
It's a state law.
Yeah.
Well, it's the health,
Yeah.
it's probably the health department.
Guess what? Well, I called them. They said, oh, there's nothing you can do about it. I said, don't you think that's a health hazard for somebody to live right next to three locomotives sitting there for hours?
I think the police, have you talked to
Yeah,
them?
and they said, don't call us. I called 911 and it was like 3 a.m. They parked at 3 a.m.
Right.
And by 5 a.m., I'm like not sleeping. I called up 911. They said, please don't call us. Nothing you can do about
Have you spoken with Wellington Council?
it. Yeah, well, I had,
The
I did
DEP
talk to who's on my street. But anyway, it's a $5,000 fine for exceeding the half hour. It's never been enforced.
And it's an EPA rule.
It's an EPA rule. Here it is.
You're gonna stay, I can't see it.
Oh, you can't. Oh, I did look several.
I'm sure you're right. But I mean, state Department of Environmental Protection, DEP or EPA.
See what it says here.
Because I can direct you to the right place.
Natalie Blythe said to copy down the locomotives, and I did, and I called her today, I called her Tuesday.
It sounds like, you know, there's two
She
ways
was
to
a
say.
state rep.
Two ways to. I see.
Maybe they should
This
give
isn't
the town-
this isn't related to our.
I know. But maybe you can get that money from them for operating a train yard in Greenfield.
Yeah, you know, there is actually taxes on trenching property.
I mean, you got the Deerfield train yard, why don't they just confine it, the locomotives idling there, but.
I would say potentially if you came to the city council and talked about it, that would be a more.
Yeah.
Appropriate and a bigger platform. Maybe some counselors can get on there and talk to them.
But this goes on every week now. There was a pause in February and March, but now they're doing it again. They did it all last summer and all last fall. And nobody would listen to me. You know, 911, please don't call us, it's not an emergency. And
I'll get your phone number set afterwards and I'll probably try to contact the health department.
well, they told me it's not, they said it was health, you know, they agreed with me.
Oh.
But there's nothing they can do.
Are you documenting,
Oh,
especially the times, the phone or something?
oh, yeah, I am. I look at the clock and I go,
I mean, like video.
well, I gotta get video.
I got a little, just like you said, the air is the
All
time.
right, we have to move on.
Yeah,
from this.
it's all right.
This is what we're here for. Sorry.
And that was my complaint.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Any other?
Yeah. First and foremost, I'd like to thank,
Okay, well, before you take off. What's your name?
Oh, John.
John Estes,
Yeah.
ESTES?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you,
I've
Jim.
lived in Franklin County my whole life.
Not yet.
Go ahead.
first and foremost, I'd like to thank
ESTES, yes.
Let's proceed.
Go ahead.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank Councilman at Large Minhas for pushing this through. He saw merit in it. I think it's been way too long. This program has been in existence for over a quarter of a century.
Since 1998.
And Greenfield has
Yes,
never
right.
opted to take advantage of it. So I think we should get past the doubt of how effective this program could benefit elders and seniors. And let's try to make it work. I think that's where we should be focused on. And again, I don't want to exclude any entity or individual out of the process.
Right.
This is a tax deductible, these contributions and so on and so forth. Many of these entities in this county are dependent. These are inelastic businesses that are thriving on the welfare and downfall of a lot of seniors here. So I think they will step up to the plate if we articulate our value.
Other way to answer Jim's questions is, it should be called the community.
It shouldn't be, but is it now called the community?
Yeah, new, that's a permit.
You are a committee. You took it on the board, if I'm, it's a community.
Okay,
It's like the conservation committee, but it has, it's a committee status and official public body, subject to all of them, so forth.
okay, all the committee,
Certainly, what we need to check, I'm not talking about the public records issue with Kathy's stuff this year. I think they would consider them to be confidential,
I think you're right.
although I'm not sure, because
It's like,
somebody applies to the program, there's no name on it. We'll have to see how the others. Maybe, but it is a show.
From what I've come across is I haven't seen where kind of what you were saying, like CPA funds are going to the city council and the city council, you know, debates it and then approves it. I haven't seen that happen with this committee happening in other towns. It kind of operates autonomously and once you set the criteria within that criteria, you can just do it out because it's also not, like you were saying, using city funds. So it's not coming out of like any revolving budget or anything like that.
So
But again, it would be safe to check in with Kathy's daughter.
it sounds like, what we want to do is look at, as, at least a representative sample of all the towns that have been doing this and try to figure out common practices and what we can determine to be the best practices. That a fair agenda item for next month.
we should, but who's gonna do the work?
I did,
And
I started it.
Okay,
Okay, I had said in the very beginning when we had almost a meeting.
yeah.
And I would, what materials I do have
Mhm.
from Westboro, Danvers, and a few other places, I tried to pull out language that I thought made the most sense. Now, I've only gone partway with that.
Okay.
But I certainly would be perfectly willing to produce a draft, legal that is DRAFT draft for folks to look at the next meeting.
Mhm.
If that would be helpful in moving things forward, I think it might be.
I think it'd be absolutely helpful.
Okay, I will do the work.
And if you want me to help you, with it, like if you want me to do any, like, hey, sift through these documents to kind of pick something up, I'd. Sure. I can help you with that.
Okay.
Yeah, because it sounded like, it sounds like it's an open field, in fact, just
Mhm.
because Newton and Danvers and Middleborough or whoever else is doing it, we're not necessarily confined to that. And one of the things we're talking about just randomly in this initial meeting is trying to solicit funds. And how we're gonna go about that. So maybe, I don't know if the materials you're getting is indicating that they're
I don't,
picking up local businesses or,
I don't have any of that.
yeah.
What I have is the two different documents, levels of documents of what's the criteria and process
Yeah.
and what is the application.
Okay.
Those are the two documents that I have information on, and that's what I'd be willing to do the work on. I don't have anything.
Cause I'd be interested in, and I'd be willing to follow it up if I can figure out who the contact people are, but contacting several towns and
Yeah.
saying, how do you get your funds? Cause you're talking about how you administer your funds.
Right.
And I'm thinking about how do we get.
We
the
would,
funds?
we would need to get the money before. we figure it out. You're right.
I'd be happy to come back next meeting and say, I talked to, 4 or 5 towns and discovered their contact list and said, how are you obtaining the write-offs on tax bills, like the Good Neighbor electric company bill,
That's what I have heard is, they put it on their like tax bills with like a box to show if you want to add.
Yeah.
This other example of tax bill statement.
Yeah.
I've got enough, for the members of the committee.
So,
But that just gives you the, idea of how they handle it.
you'll guys have the policies and procedures for administering the funds.
Yeah,
And if the committee agrees, I'll take some time and try to contact a half a dozen towns and find out how they're soliciting.
that'd be great.
David, many of the municipalities that have reached out to you, they market this fund aggressively. They're interested in protecting their seniors and elders as
Do you have contacts?
I have contact, but they're having a private conversation here, and I'm not.
Yeah, no, I mean,
People rude.
and I mean, if you have like officials that I can contact.
I'm sure, I'd be more than, if you're gonna act on them, sure. Yeah, and I'm not gonna keep spinning my wheels. I think we're past that. This has been in existence since 1998. Let's focus on making it happen.
I have a question. Is this for 55 or 65 older or something?
That's a
Has it
very
been
good
determined?
focus.
That's part of what we,
See, that's a good question.
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
55, every year seems to get younger and younger.
Newton uses an age of 60. Okay. They also, this, a more, obscure question is it elderly and disabled, or is it elderly and disabled? That's just like, the town of Newton, for example, has a category elderly or disabled. So in other words, if somebody comes in and they're not 60, but they're on some of the disability programs, they're eligible as well. So you could have a 40-year-old getting some of this one. It's not just for elderly. Let me pass this one out. These are the guidelines. Again, this is one thing. These are the new guidelines for the program. David, I don't think it's not particularly mysterious what they will tell you. They will tell you that we tell people in our town that you can donate to this fund, and we give it to people who apply. In other words, I don't think there's much, I haven't seen any example of a community that's really done an aggressive outreach to the business community.
Right.
And said, we want you to be a major. Sure. And that's what, and we'll suggest in a few minutes, some other things that, like using CPA on Community Preservation Act, that are, I think, more aggressive. We could be more aggressive than I think many towns are, cities are, and probably raise more money. Because I don't think, a lot of these towns are not, they're just sort of doing it by the book. And it's not a particularly exciting or innovative approach to how you get money. But anybody who's trying to raise money, you can be very creative, how you approach people and who you church. Yeah. Now, I know some business people who definitely contribute. This is, again, more research that has, you can look at this as another example of what a town does. The town of Newton has 7 eligibility issues. You have to own real estate in the town as your primary domicile. You have to have had been there for at least 1 year. The second thing, you live and own that property for at least a year. The third is that you're 6 year over. The fourth is you're disabled, then you're showing that by having eligibility for certain programs like Disability Veterans Administration, Workers' Compensation. Okay. Number 4, you have a gross household income. 11, they're using community development block grant eligibility income. The 5th is the domicile has to be assessed at or below the median assessed value. Which is interesting. The 6th one is other household assets can be looked at. For example, stocks, bonds, CDs, IRAs. I don't know, you could create an application process that's so intimidating, nobody wants to apply. Right.
So I would be careful about number 6. Number 7 is extraordinary circumstances, which is a way of saying anything that's out of the ordinary, unusual expense that you had this year. So, what they don't have, which I'd like to see in there, is elders or disabled people who are at risk of tax title taking. That's my particular interest, having been through the tax title issue in this city and some of the negative consequences for what it can mean for both the city and the homeowner. I don't want to see people unhoused because they can't pay their taxes. We should have what I am calling the zero foreclosure program. And just not to bore you with this, but I'll stop after this comment, but I sent the mayor last August. Sent there the sort of 1-page memo called the zero foreclosure. And I told her that, one, nothing is typically reform, signed into law, that you can't take that as home equity. We should have a goal, to try to reduce the number of foreclosures taking place annually in the city to as low a number as possible using coordinated activity between the assessors and the collector's office.
And it goes on to talk 5 or 6 categories. Actually, maybe I think
I have a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how to parse what you just handed out.
Yeah.
It says applicant, it says you gotta be this.
This is easier, I've circled this 6 things.
No. Yeah, that's, you're not addressing my question. It says something or something and.
Mhm.
Is that?
Which
Are
one,
those
tell me
and-
what that,
Pardon?
which one are you looking at?
The first two say applicant must own and disable. That's an or, it's either or. But what follows are ands. And do the ands attach to disabled as they are presented? Or does that apply to own or, and then those other
Show me the
things?
sentence you're talking about, because I'm not clear where you are. Just read it to me.
Look, this says or,
Yeah.
right? And these are all ands. So my question is, here are the two ors.
Yes.
And the question is, when you have and,
Yeah.
does and apply to this only because it follows?
Mhm.
Or does it apply to the set where you come in the door this way or this way, and then these other things
No,
came?
you have to meet all these criteria.
And it says the following requirements apply to both elderly applicants and
That's what I was.
disabled
Thank you.
applicants.
It's good. You enter either door and then you have these other.
If your income is too high, you don't get it.
No, got it.
You might get all the others.
Got it.
If you haven't lived in here for a year, you.
Yes. You answered my question.
So that brings up the other agenda item. Agenda point, what is it? Yeah, I feel a need to have an overview of the current, tax relief mechanisms that are available. The assessor's office and elsewhere, so we understand where we fit within that cluster, in all I'm saying. The other abatements, the exemptions, things like that. And how do we get that? Do we get that from the assessor's office, the tax collector's office? Where do we get that?
That manual has it all there.
Yes,
Okay,
That tax board, that open law.
this is
manual
from
has-
2023, and this is actually where the idea came.
Jim has them all, the assessors have them.
Yeah, they said,
With the exception maybe of the circuit breaker, which is a state program, it's not administered.
right.
This is.
But I mean, the circuit breaker's in that.
Yeah, it's in that bid, yeah.
I think you can also take into consideration, to prevent possibly double dipping, someone attempting to game the system. Is tax deferrals, which Greenfield has never, according to the last tax collector, you never did. That's gonna prevent it, many people, keeping people in their homes. Okay, as well as, you're using this program, it's a hardship program. I think all of these things come into play. So if you qualify for hardship, you can't be applying for tax deferral, you can't be applying for elderly taxation.
I think I basically agree with you. The hardship stuff, whether it's 41D or it's 18A, applies for 3 years only.
Mhm.
At the end of the 3 years, you can renew if you pay off the lien.
Mhm.
But you put somebody into hardship and they're struggling to meet their bills and they will never be self-sufficient, they will lose their house. That's just the way that game is played.
Well,
And it's not a game.
well,
I'm just
also.
saying that's the way that thing is.
With tax deferral, now most of the wealthy communities encourage that. And if you do your research, you will see many of those interest rates are less than 3%, depending on what the treasury.
But it is, you know,
You're. I don't know, can you give me a minute, please? Okay, with tax deferral, we'll use a model of someone 70 years old. And they live to 90 and they deferred their taxes. their estate is gonna be taxed X amount of dollars. However, that property has appreciated, my research has shown, especially in the eastern part of the state, millions of dollars. Okay, so I think we should be utilizing all the available tools and vehicles to keep and protect seniors in there.
There's no question about.
Well, why are we doing it? Have you
Because-
done one this year? Have we done
No,
that?
no, we have not done any clause 18 or 18A. 18 is, as far as I can tell, nothing, because it's a one paragraph in the law. 18A gets into the details, which says it's 3 years and you gotta apply every year. And at the end of the 3 years, you need a 5-year plan
Mhm.
to pay it off.
Right.
But that's paying off the deferral
Mhm.
plus paying your current taxes.
Mhm.
And then the issue becomes, if a person can't pay their current taxes,
Mhm.
are they going to be in a position to pay their then current taxes 3 years down the road, plus 1/5 of whatever bill they've racked up?
Mhm.
And if the answer is no, then foreclosure happens.
Okay.
You folks are clearly far ahead of me in knowledge of, this mosaic of what might be available. I would benefit. Now, maybe the committee as a whole doesn't need this because you're further ahead than I am. But I would like to know the mosaic of these various possibilities. I mean, I can follow just what you just said. That's fine, but I need to, have a sense of what do veterans get? What a blind, I know what blind people get, there are a variety of these things that are used to ameliorate the tax burden.
Correct.
And I think as a group, we would benefit from sort of a summary at our next meeting from the mayor.
I think we have that, and I'll just shoot it around.
Okay. Because, I don't,
Yep.
I'm not a dumb man, I'm just ignorant.
By the way, that booklet is available, I don't know, if it's still, this seems at the John.
Is it?
It is.
That's a
Yeah.
nice.
Is it also on the
Yeah.
website?
I'll be there tomorrow exercising. I'll pick up one.
Are they, gratis? It's like, they're.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah,
Obviously, that
well,
would
you
be-
have to ask if they have them
that you can
in stock.
Okay. Okay, so,
Well, you can email that stuff out.
Yes.
Okay, great.
okay. And, what's the other? What was the other agenda item? Okay, so we've got, next meeting, we will have a summary of, the sort of policies and procedures of variety of towns.
A draft.
Yes, a draft summary. And I will reach out to a half a dozen towns and find out how they're doing their fundraising. It may all just be check offs on the property tax, and maybe some may be more original or aggressive in pursuing
Just
fundraising.
to note that, David, Westboro, Danvers, and Easton, besides Newton, that's the information I have in front of you, just to make your burden lighter.
We ought to find out who administers this thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, is it administered within the town of Newton, or is the committee itself actually doing the administration?
That's part of the question you would ask, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I assume that any funds we collect just go into the city coffers.
I'd be careful about that.
Okay.
I think it would be segregated.
Yes, it goes into a separate.
Yeah.
But the treasurer goes in.
So we will have like a finite amount depending on the contributions received.
Exactly.
It's just called a special account in the general treasury.
Mhm.
It shall be in the custody of the president. treasure on invested funds. We tear up his off, correct, preserve that, you can start investing.
I hear Bitcoin is big.
If you like fiat currency, you'll love Bitcoin.
The other thing I did mention, the community preservation, one of the people on the community preservation board did approach me, and they said, I think this would be a great program for CPA money. This year, the CPA gave, it was $18,000 to the Greenfield Housing Authority to pay people's first month and last month rent. The people who are moving to housing. So in other words, the person was saying to me, there's precedent for funds going directly to Greenfield residents through the CPA. I'd like to see his committee sponsor something like that, request to that board. Because I think it's got certainly as much value as a pickleball, which I'm not against pickleball, but need some American people to help by the CPA money. Because I'm all of us here at this table are residents of the town. The city, we pay into that fund. So I'd like to see some of that money used. Like this, and this person that approached me said she would be willing to speak on behalf of that community. So I just didn't want to lose that in the show, because that's another example of sources of funding that are probably not seen too often in these programs across the state.
Yeah.
They're playing it pretty much by the book.
And that seems like preserving the community, in its literal sense. If there's people who are potentially at risk of losing their home, their residence, where they're living, their community members, it could potentially be one of the things, but also that's something that could be, decided by the CPA committee. Like they'll have to check the merits of that, and I think that would be.
They make
productive.
they make the decision, not this committee.
Yeah.
Your CPA money, that's their bottom line.
Yeah, but it would be a grant to us, then we administer it
Correct.
by the protocols, procedures that we develop.
David, I'd actually like to see this committee approach half a dozen bases to put seed money into this. Yeah, so that you'd be able to come out running sometime in the summer by saying all the way in the table tax fund announced that they raised $30,000.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a story.
I think the experience of other towns, how did they get started, is an important ingredient in understanding this, because okay, so we raised $5,000. What are we doing? $5,000 doesn't go very far. And when you're up to 10, is that when they start doing it, and 20, and that was going?
Yeah.
That's the stuff we have to decide.
Yeah.
Well, it's
And
also
also
stuff you need to find out.
Right,
And
Right.
then make our own decision.
right.
Define a prudent reserve before we actually open up the application process.
Yeah.
Things like that. And those are, I think this is gonna be interesting. Is there, other agenda items that we need to discuss? In summary, do we take minutes? Do I produce minutes? What do we?
Have to produce minutes, mhm.
Yeah.
By law. Don't we have to have minutes by law?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. How are we gonna do? it? I have a summary of, I've been taking some notes, and I can produce what will at least look like minutes, if that's acceptable.
There are products that you can use with Zoom that will record everything we're talking about, and then you can show them through some AI tools that'll summarize the key points.
Okay. And those are available off the shelf currently?
Yeah, I mean, closed captioning is available.
Because we haven't taken a formal vote yet.
No, that's right.
You know, there will be times for that formal votes.
Yeah, but that's all on the transcript.
Yeah.
What we just did, there's a transcript for this on, usually I get them on YouTube before GCTV, they're just a little bit slow. But you can, whenever this gets posted, I don't even know, I don't know, Kathy looks and posts them. But they're usually up in a few days and you can get the transcript. Is there a transcript on it?
That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, closed captions.
Yeah.
Here, let me just turn,
You can go on, when this is online, you can go on and you can look for the transcript and it'll go along with the meeting as it's going, or you can move ahead. You can also copy the transcript.
Can I ask a question? Just occurred to me. So earlier we talked about the fact that we would not be using any city funds. If we got money from CPA, isn't that city funds?
Yes. It's technically taxpayers' contributions, but it goes to the city.
Well, all city funds is taxpayers, right? I mean, that's where the money comes from us. The point I'm asking is that we said before, because this is a body that does not use city money, that we would be relatively autonomous. If in fact we're talking about using any city money, does that change that? That's my question.
Not the CPA, because that would be a grant to this board, to this committee, but by the CPA.
can the CPA, grant money to other city organizations, of which this would be one?
Greenfield Housing Authority is one. They got individual.
Rec department.
Yeah, they.
I see, okay.
In fact, I think that's an advantage, because the council feels that these are our people, these are part of our government. But you're not part of the city government,
Right.
and that a lot of CPA money, traditionally has gone to city governments coming forward with projects. Correct.
Just as long as there's precedent for, one committee granting to another committee.
I believe that the CPA can get the money to this committee to make, to their beneficiaries.
That's a bridge we'll
Yeah.
either cross or not cross in
Okay.
next few months.
Yeah.
Good, I'm glad we could finally get this.
Maybe you might want to ask somebody to be secretary.
Yeah.
To keep notes.
If there's somebody willing to be secretary, don't drink but once.
Not me.
I can do it.
All right.
A council would be a good idea.
I think so. Okay.
I guess.
Thanks. And did I get the contact information of people that?
I think you did.
Yeah.
You signed it.
I'm afraid you took your notes on top of our.
Okay.
Can we then?
Were we supposed to sign?
Yeah, well, I was just trying to get the committee members, names and preferred contact information.
Okay.
All I've got right now is emails.
I can try and talk to you.
Okay, with that circulating, is there any other business that we need to conduct tonight?
Next meeting is the 22nd of May.
22nd of May, which is the 4th. 5:30.
The location for that isn't determined.
It's here.
It will be here.
Oh, it will be.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing up. Thank you for, you guys, for the public comment. This is a good
I
start.
want to thank everybody.